Hi, I'm Stuart Malina, Music Director of the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to our February episode of Conversations with the Maestro. Today we'll be speaking with one of our violists, Adriana Linares, and she'll talk about her journey, which took her from South America, from Venezuela, to Harrisburg, and which involves not just orchestral playing, but chamber music playing, teaching, and also conducting. Before we go to Adriana, I'd like to tell you that in a couple of days, on February 20th, we'll be releasing our next Masterworks concert. This is a concert of works for strings and also including piano. We'll be doing a piece by Jesse Montgomery called Strum, the Grieg Holberg Suite, and Bloch's incredible Concerto Grosso No. 1 for strings and piano. I hope you'll join us. If you're interested, you can get tickets and find out information at harrisburgsymphony.org. But for now, let's go to Adriana. Well, hi, Adriana. How are you doing?
Good. Hi, Stuart. How's it going?
It's going well. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks so much for joining us and doing this today with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I actually think that this is one that I've been most looking forward to because your story is so very different from any of the other ones we've had so far. I mean, you come from a different culture, a different continent, a different country. And I'm very interested in hearing about your upbringing and how you came to music and all of that. So let's jump right in. How did you come to music? Where did you grow up? And how did you start playing the viola?
Sure. So, all right. So I was born in Venezuela, in Caracas, Venezuela. And I was very lucky to, right from the very beginning of my childhood, get into a school by the name of Emil Friedman's School, who was founded by a Czech violinist and philosopher. And my mom really insisted that we would get into that school because she heard that it was like one of the best schools in the country. And you had to be on a waiting list to get in. And finally we get in and we enter this world of what I would have not known that, but at that time it was immersed into just education, culture, music, sports. So it was a wonderful school. And I was introduced to the violin. Actually, the story is kind of funny because I was already in dance class and the director of the school personally, they would like test you and measure your hands and do a little singing, test or something like that. And they said, no, the little girl, she needs to get into the violin lessons. And my mom was like, no, she's already doing dance. She doesn't need another extra activity. They're like, excuse me, no, that she needs to get into violin lessons. In any case, I got into violin and I was able to join the orchestra. I did the chorus. And later, when I was 14, I was introduced to the viola. There was a girl that was phenomenal at my school. She actually went to school in the States and I admire her so much. And I thought, I love the sound of that instrument. And I never heard it as a solo instrument. I was a violinist in the orchestra. And there was something about the sound that really called my attention. So I also loved when I would sing in the chorus, I loved singing the harmony parts. So I thought, if I get an instrument where I get to sing what I usually sing or play when I'm just jamming and having fun with my friends, I would love that as well. And of course, as you know, like viola, there's more opportunities. We're not gonna lie. So
well, it's true.
It was a good match at the time. I was 15, and immediately I was invited to go to Interlochen camps in Michigan. And immediately, like all these other doors started to open. So it was a good match, and musically and practically. And yeah, that's how I started to be immersed in music. The director of the school was a violinist and a philosopher. So Mozart and Tchaikovsky Serenade and the idea of chamber music and collaboration and community, like everything integrated in one. You can imagine you would start your morning with a math class, and then immediately you would go into quartet coaching, and then recess would come, and then you had orchestra, and then you move on to biology. So it was all integrated. Actually, two of the members of the Harrisburg Symphony went to that school. Daniel Pereira Daniel and Romulo. That's where we met because we played actually the three
It
of us.
always strikes me as funny because we have a number of Venezuelans who play in our orchestra, and everyone knows each other. I mean, and you're from those who don't know this, Venezuela is a large country with many, many people, but the music world is very small. Do you want to talk a little bit about El Sistema and what that is? Did that play a big part in your musical upbringing?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was not directly linked to El Sistema, but all the teachers that were hired in my Emil Friedman school were part of El Sistema and sort of brought a little bit of the ideology and the philosophy along with the Friedman's philosophy. And so the whole thing about El Sistema, which really took off after Gustavo Dudamel, when he started his job with the LA Symphony and he started to conduct more, people started to notice more about the whole movement of classical music in Venezuela. And it's pretty much the idea of bringing music to just about anybody. So they form music programs and branches and the idea of providing music education, classical in this case, but they have other programs as well, to just about anybody, regardless of your background or your means. And it has really taken off. And I'm really proud to say that it's been a model for many organizations and programs in the States to sort of emulate or be inspired in some way about this idea that classical music is not just for the elite. It could be accessible. And if we give people a chance and an opportunity, they, they might thrive. You don't know. So anyway,
it's a tremendously inspiring program. And I will say that, I've been at lots of auditions for several different orchestras. They're always Venezuelans. I mean, it's a large country, but it's part of a much larger continent. Many of those musicians have come to the States, but the Venezuelans seem very well prepared. They all have extensive orchestral experience. And that, I think, is incredibly wonderful.
It's a big culture for music in general. Like I grew up with not just the classical music in this school and then El Sistema and all that, but it's a big culture for music, for dance, and music just seems to be part of the way of life, but the way of living. And it of course made a lot of sense for, there were in my school, the opportunity to dance, to sing, to play. And of course, all the teachers from El Sistema would bring all that background and all that knowledge. So it's amazing how nowadays it's our, what do you say, like a brand or something like that Venezuelans have become very well known for the training. It's quite remarkable. There's a lot to be learned from that. And it's an inspiration actually for many.
Well, I hope a lot of politicians are watching this. We need to have more arts in our schools, no doubt. And there have been study after study after study that have shown that it not just is good for developing artists, but for developing just creative thinkers in all disciplines.
Absolutely. Communities, and which is something that was so accented and so strong in our school, the sense of community, sense of belonging, and sense of purpose. And really, of course, we can talk forever about this, but that's definitely one of the biggest values that music in general has. And I'm proud to say that Venezuela has taken the lead on that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So let's take a step forward. So what brought you to the States? You said you attended Interlochen, but I assume after that summer you went back to Caracas. What brought you to the States as a permanent resident?
Right. I was set because the teacher from Interlochen said, would you like to come to the States, to the university where he was teaching at the time? I said, sure, sign me up. I didn't know anything else. I just knew that I wanted to pursue a career in music performance. And even though at the time, music and classical music, it was very strong in Venezuela, there was not such the degree for a performance degree or such. So it seemed like that was the perfect fit. But my senior year in high school, this Cuban American violinist by the name of Andres Cárdenas.
I know him.
Went to Venezuela to my high school. He was flying, I think every 2 months, he was flying to work with the kids from my school, playing, chamber music, conducting the chamber orchestra. And by May, he tells me, by the way, what are your plans for next year? I said, I'm sad. I'm going to this school with this teacher. It's like, would you like to come to apply to Carnegie Mellon and study with this violist here. And the funny story is that I probably owned just one CD of viola in my life. And that one CD was Attar Arad, the one teacher that he was saying, we're hiring this teacher this year and he'll fly from Bloomington, Indiana once a week. Would you like to apply to? I'm like, oh my God, okay, great. So I applied, I did everything I needed to do. And I went to Carnegie Mellon for 1 year and a half to study with Attar Arad and be doing English because I didn't speak any English and I had to pass the TOEFL and all that. And then after that, it worked out that I went to do my undergrad at Indiana University where Attar was teaching for full time. So I finished my undergrad, and then after that, I spent a year in the Midwest, somewhere in Louisville, Kentucky, with a string quartet and working for the university. And then I was confused about what I wanted to do, if I wanted to continue the quartet or give the chance of doing the orchestra audition route. So it made sense to look for somebody that would do that job well. And I had heard that Roberto Diaz from the Curtis Institute of Music was great at training people how to win orchestra jobs. So I set my mind to trying to get into Curtis with the news that they had a cut for the age. I was 24 and they 23.
That's right.
So it didn't work out that I auditioned, but he said, I still would want to teach you. I would still take you as a student. So I was lucky enough that I did my master's at Temple, and then I worked it out so that I would study with Diaz. And so that's the focus there was more of a orchestra excerpt studies. And I mean, of course, you learn all the repertoire, but the focus was I want to win an orchestra audition. And that's how I ended up in Philadelphia.
That's great. And so then did you just read about an audition in the Harrisburg Symphony and come audition?
Well, kind of. So as the plan, I was about to be done with the degree. And I looked at the AFM and I was looking at things that were close to the area because I wasn't ready to move or anything like that. And I wanted to practice taking an audition. And so my very first audition ever was the Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra. It was, I had no idea how, all I knew it's that I knew my excerpts and I practiced them like crazy, but I didn't know, with the driving, where you do it, if there's a screen, how does it work? Do you talk? I knew nothing. I literally remember when we met, I drove and that was my first audition. I remember one of the members of the jury were like, you can say something like that. But Harrisburg was close, about an hour and a half. And that was my first audition that I ever took.
Well, I remember your audition well because, you hear player after player after player and many really wonderful players, but your sound immediately was very different. You have a very warm, very rich sound. And the amount of expression that you poured into the playing, even behind the screen. I mean, you are a very physical player, but we can hear it in the music. And it was very inspiring. And, you wake up and it's like, oh, this is one to pay extra attention to. So I'm delighted that you took the audition. I'm delighted you won the audition. Let's take a break now and go to one of your musical excerpts. Do you want to introduce what you have for us today?
Sure. So this is Ginastera Quartet number 1. And it's been one of our quartet's favorites to prepare, to perform. It's actually a very powerful, energetic piece. So we had the chance to do it actually twice. We did it last week live in Palm Beach.
Wow.
Yes. And so that was exciting. And then for the recording that you heard, it was actually for the Concert International, the concert series down in Memphis, where we were so thankful that they actually went ahead with the idea of the pre-recorded concert idea. So we took our masks, we prepared, we videotaped and record, and that's what you're going to see. I believe you're going to see an excerpt from the 4th movement, which is almost like the end of this epic piece. I mean, the whole idea of the gaucho, which is the cowboy, was an inspiration to Ginastera. I call him the Latin Bartok. It just sounds like the middle movement sounds like night music. And the second movement, very mysterious, very, very, very similar to the writing that Bartók would offer in his quartets. This last movement is sort of like the end of the whole thing, and it's a very celebration-like sort of sound with a ton of extended techniques and super chordal sonorities.
Let's see.
Play it.
Let's find out in a moment. Wow. I mean, I love the music of Ginastera. I find it, he has such a beautiful way of combining true modernism. I mean, it's very modern music, but it's never anything but accessible. And part of that is his rhythmic drive. Part of it is his beautiful melodies. He just has a way of engaging an audience, no matter what the texture, no matter what the emotion. Do you find it particularly fun to play?
You're absolutely right. I mean, I cannot tell you the reaction of the audience every time we finish a movement. You hear,
yeah.
And then at the end, and I remember I took my mom once on tour with us for like somewhere in north of New York or something like that, and she said, she's not a musician. Wow, that Ginastera, that's my favorite so far. So you would think this is like hard to listen kind of music, and like you say, it's very digestible. It's very direct, very easy to follow. And the sounds are just so unique. There's all this kind of extended techniques that you'll hear. So you're on your feet, on your toes, like all the time. Like listeners are like, you can tell that they're not really detaching.
Do you remember that we played Estancia Dances? Were you playing for that concert a couple of years ago? And people, no one knew the piece. No one knew what to expect. And there was just this whoosh of applause at the end. Like they couldn't believe how powerful that was. So
it does that. His music does that. It's fantastic. We are gonna be learning the other quartets, and definitely I've conducted a few of his pieces. The Estancia arranged for youth orchestra. Every time we play that, the kids just like they blossom and they smile. There's something about his music, whether it's the more mysterious and serious or the celebration like sounding. It's very catchy and, like you said, easy to listen to.
Yeah. So I want to take a moment and just look at your instrument, because it's one of the most unique looking violas I've ever seen. Can you show that to the audience and talk a little bit about this instrument?
Here's my beautiful Itsuka, and yes, it does have a tattoo.
It looks almost like a gamba.
It's inspired by the viola d'amore, and the maker of my viola is a Japanese luthier by the name of Hiroshi Itsuka, and he happens to live about 45 minutes away from here. And actually, the story about how I got to, not this viola, but I used to have the one that I used for the orchestra audition for Harrisburg. It was a tiny bit bigger. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I started to wonder, what if I had a smaller viola? Because somebody lent me a viola for a week. I'm like, wow, this is a lot easier. So I ended up switching to a 15.5, which for those of you who don't know about violas, they come in different sizes. So it's a tiny bit lighter and a tiny bit smaller. And it just feels because of the bottom being cut like that, like a pear shape, then it gives it sort of like a cello quality, sounding very bass-like. And at the same time, because you have this cot, you see typical instruments. Well, if you look at the picture up there that I have, the ribs don't go like this. But because this design allows for you to go to higher positions a lot easier, so you can reach to these positions, because usually violas will have trouble because we have this in the middle. So with that design there, that cot makes it so much easier and comfortable. And this added, that gives it that bass quality or cello quality sounding. I think it makes the perfect combination. And he's just so good. His ear, every time I go to fix it or adjust anything, he makes the viola sound 10 times better. He's very particular about the way we set up the strings, the way he puts a little mute in here, so that the A kind of balances from it doesn't sound like a too bright of a sound. He's just a brilliant maker, and we're just so lucky to have it right here. I got to this violas by pure accident, actually, because Carlos Rubio from the orchestra, my dear friend and colleague, founder of my quartet, he actually, his violin was by this maker, and he said, oh, you want to drive with me? This is maybe 20 years ago. You want to drive with me to get it fixed? And then I, by accident, got to the shop, and the maker said, oh, I have some violas here that I'm making. Would you like to try? So would you like to try? It turned into me going through all the concertos and every piece that I want, like I could think of, in the back of his shop. And I said, wow, this is my other viola. This is an amazing instrument. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but that belongs to somebody in the Berlin Philharmonic or something like that. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. What does it take to get one of your violas? It's like, oh, there's a 4-year waiting list. Fine, just forget it. In the next day, I get a phone call from him, and he says, would you like to have that instrument? I was like, what's going on here? I don't even have money to buy this right now. He said, I have cleared it. I heard you play for all this time. I just couldn't believe it. Are you serious? You're gonna, let me have this viola? So he actually said it would be an honor if you have my viola. I was like, oh my God, this is
what a story.
This is gonna be a dream. This is not real. Like, so anyway, it was a pure coincidence. And of course I said, yes, we will figure out a way. And it was not the viola that I used, actually. It was just right after Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra audition.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started using his viola. And then when I downsized, it worked out that he, what do you call, like exchanged?
Barter.
Yeah. So
Sure.
I've been very happy with it, as you can tell. And it gets better. Like, I mean, of course you have to play it, love it, and, use it a lot. But every time you take it to him, he just has wonderful ears and hands, and he takes it to the next level. And of course he knows, like, the adjustment, the strings, the everything that he does. It's very, very fun.
It's a real art being a luthier, and it's something that the players are so dependent on these technicians to make their instruments sound good. It's something audiences have no idea of, that a bad bridge or a bad soundboard or whatever can ruin a Stradivarius.
Exactly.
And so you're very fortunate to have not just the maker of your instrument, but one who also has the ability to make these adjustments.
For sure. I'm very lucky in that way.
Let's talk a little bit about quartet. First, I want to know about the founding of the Dali Quartet and what your ethos is. What is it that makes you different from other quartets? And also how you make the adjustment from playing in a quartet, which you have four soloists basically playing together, to playing in an orchestra, which is, section playing, and it's a very different, perhaps more disciplined kind of playing. But I'd love to hear your take on those differences.
Sure. So back in 2004, when I was done with school and thinking about potentially winning or getting an orchestra job, the idea of chamber music was still swimming in my head. When I was 15, back in that school that I told you I was introduced to string quartet playing, and I said, this is kind of like the best of the two worlds. I get to play with people in an ensemble, and I get to be my solo voice at times. So I made a decision that I always wanted to do quartets in some kind of capacity. But in 2004, when I was done with school, I had been in a quartet with Carlos back in the Midwest, and we got back together in the conversation of, like, we should really play together. We work together well. Let's make a quartet of something that is not just chamber music, but something else that means something to us as Venezuelan musicians. Why don't we make a quartet that really the mission would be to promote Latin American music, to promote Latin American art, our culture, dances, music that we grew up with, even, or composers that otherwise people might not heard of. And so that was like the initial thought, and we've stuck with it. It's been since 2004, about 17, 18 years that we've been together. It's been a long journey. We started from zero. Carlos and I started from zero. We auditioned, and Daniel Pereira was our first cellist.
I remember.
And then we held auditions for violin. And from that point, we've grown. We were babies. We started from scratch. We didn't know what it meant to start a concert series, to start a festival, to get concerts, but with a lot of the right ingredients, the personality, the luck, all, you name it. We've been together all this times, and of course the quartet has evolved. Now we're doing a lot of different kind of projects. As of course, when we started, I remember the year that we started, we'd said we should do a camp, and that's how our festival now. That's an international festival where we have students from all over the world. But we started with 11 kids from the community, and we said, oh, if we like playing quartets, they probably would love playing quartets as well. So that's how the whole idea of the chamber music camp and the quartet started, pretty much out of this desire to really bring classical / Latin, because it's not that we're just playing the Latin music. We play Beethoven. We just played Beethoven last week. We play Mozart, Beethoven, Bartok, Haydn, but we make a point to really showcase music that otherwise people would never hear. And nowadays, the presenters and the audiences are really loving that combination. So we could go one way or the other, or just fully Latin American repertoire, depending on what the presenters and the audiences want. We were just in Mexico last year, and surprisingly, they didn't want anything Latin American. We're like, really? We're in Mexico. we don't want to play, but we played all classical. So it's been wonderful. My dear friend Carlos, we have a blast. It's being in a quartet. It's, as I described it before, it's sort of like the best of the two worlds. You're your own voice, but you're playing with people. You're still collaborating. You're communicating. So there's a lot more room, like you said, for being, in a way, free with your ideas, with your style of playing, but always keeping an eye. There's no time where I do not detach from listening to at least, well, everybody. It's like You're tuned in, and especially as a violist. That's my job. I feel like I'm just always, I gotta go with the flow, and it's fine. It's great. I love being a collaborator. I whatever I can do to make my peers shine and sound better, that's my job. And then when I have my line, it's my line. I say, you follow me now.
I often imagine what your rehearsals would be like, because I know you and Carlos very, very well. I know Jesus very well. I know Daniel very well. One of the things I love about the Venezuelan people I know is, first, the joy. There's just an underlying joy to your culture, but also you're fiery. And I can only imagine these rehearsals must just be unbelievable. Like you'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, it's funny. The thing with Carlos and I, we get along really well inside and outside. And even though we're very energetic, high, energy people, somehow we have a great way to communicate. I think that's the point. With all this stuff, that for anything to last that much, there's all these other things, but the way that we communicate, we found a way. I've known Carlos for more than 20 years. So traveling, touring, rehearsing, recording on stress, eating meals. You name it. So it's, it's a very different environment, of course, that when I go to the Harrisburg Symphony or other orchestras that I play with, I would say, when I'm playing in an orchestra, at the beginning it was difficult. Harrisburg was the first orchestra that I ever played, and I probably thought and felt like I was always sticking out because I hear myself too much, and you need to be heard in a quartet. And with the years, I've learned, the more I play in orchestra, and which I love as well, it's a different kind of mindset. It's more of a sense of, for me as a violist, of matching, joining, collaborating, sort of melting into. And so it takes a different skill of course, you have to listen just like you listen in the quartet, but it's more about a community, unity, and just having a uniform kind of sound for the goodness of the whole, which is a beautiful thing at the end of the day too. And it's not too far out from the quartet either, because I cannot just go on my own in the quartet. It's just simply, when you have 4 people to maneuver, it's easier for the flow to go. But when you're with the orchestra, you have to be more adjusting. I just had a wonderful conversation with a young fellow from Brazil that I'm helping him for orchestra auditions and things like that. And the first thing I said to him, it's not like you have to change who you are, because he was concerned about, well, I feel in orchestra I have to change who I am as a player and I can't be expressive. It's not that. It's that all those purposes, you put it together for a common goal. And as long as you're able to listen and go with that, it's not that you're going to change, it's you adjust.
It's true. It's like you had the section needs to be as expressive as you would play in a quartet,
right?
But it has to be as a section, and
it has to be as a section. Challenge. It has to be together. So it's not that you're changing. I'm not going to change my sound. I'm not going to change my sense of rhythm. Actually, all those contribute to the section, hopefully making a better mass and a better team. So that's the biggest difference, I would say. I mean, it's a different mindset. I love it because it unless I'm playing principal, which I love it too. I've had the opportunity to play with you guys and other orchestras. I feel like when you're playing principal, it's a little bit like the quartet mode where I just have to know, and that comes from like the experience of sort of being a conductor lately. I wouldn't call myself a conductor, but I've had to do it on the job. It's this listen, when you're principal, really, you have to be so aware of all the surroundings. Not that you're not as a section, but you're more within so that you can be with the others. But
no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So let's take a break and go to your second excerpt. Do you want to introduce the Arriaga?
Sure. This is the Arriaga Quartet number 3 in E flat. We started learning it this past seasons, and we absolutely love it. We actually call that one the Spanish Mozart because it's you're playing it and it reminds you so much of Mozart, so much of early Beethoven. In fact, there's a movement, the third movement, which you won't play, but I encourage you all to listen to. And when we come out with our recording, you have to get it. It's beautiful, but it reminds us so much of Beethoven in so many ways. So what you're gonna hear is actually an excerpt from the second movement. And in the second movement is titled Pastoral. And it reminds me of a zarzuela, which is a Spanish opera. It's so operatic in its writing. And the excerpt that you are gonna hear, it showcases the storm. And then after the storm, this little bird's going, and I have a line that goes, and then you can enjoy it from there on. It's very graphic and visual as well. Talk about that when we were discussing Tenastera. It's very operatic, and I think you'll love it. Yeah, let's listen.
Fantastic. Well, that is very beautiful. And, I can't escape the comparison with the Pastoral Symphony, which of course has a famous storm as well. Where does this fall in terms of that? I mean, was there a direct connection in Arriaga's mind?
I would think so. I think he wrote this quartet actually when he was very young, and I think 17. He died unfortunately very young, and you can just hear the influence in the music. Absolutely. Yeah. I would think there's a straight connection. You definitely hear it. There's the third movement sounds, I forget, one of the symphonies. I think that the number 6 as well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a wonderful work. People need to hear it. People need to, hear this kind of music. And that's why we're playing it, because otherwise, it's not that often that you see it scheduled in performances. With more quartets, of course, are getting to know this repertoire, but definitely it's our call.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us today. So let's talk just a little bit more about your role as an educator, because I know it's a very large passion of yours, and it's something you feel very strongly about. I know you have your summer festival. I know you teach privately. You have a son who has just finished a long course of study, a marvelous cellist. Talk a little bit about the role of education in your life and in our society.
Sure. So back, let's see, when I started the quartet, around that time, my son was also about 9 years old. And I was the mother now of a aspiring musician. He played the piano first and then the cello. And I started to struggle a little bit with like finding programs or community-oriented programs that would be similar to what I grew up with, which I really missed. So I started to take some private students from his own school, his friends, and I made a connection with the local teacher. And I, at the same time, had a small job teaching at a community conservatory in the area. So all these things kind of started to grow with, of course, the idea of the quartet and the camp at the time. My son was starting to also get pretty good. The students would call, I heard your mom teaches, can I have a lesson? So all these things led to the idea of forming a program, something that would go more formally, where I would engage the quartet in the teaching and do more formalized sort of instruction in the form, of course, of the private lessons. But, if we're all together, let's play together. So the youth orchestra was formed. And then from that idea that they were getting pretty good at it, it's like, well, I think I might want to audition to conservatories. Oh, okay, well, let's make a pre-college program. Oh, okay, you know what? We have auditions coming up and competitions coming up. Let's make a camp so that it's geared towards just that kind of mentality and preparation. And summer is coming and the festival is growing. So everything started to grow kind of naturally. One thing sort of led to the other. And I would say one of my biggest inspirations was my son, because I really wanted a community and a place where he could grow and develop, sort of similar to what I grew up with, and without having to go to New York City or downtown Philadelphia, get affordable, training and in a positive sort of, fun way.
Yeah.
So that's how the whole thing started to grow. And then it made sense to just take all this programming and all this things happening and put it under the umbrella of a nonprofit. And that's how ARCONET was formed. ARCONET stands for Arts and Community Network, ARCONET. And the 4 key words for ARCONET sort of embrace what I feel and do as an artist, which is performance, education, diversity, and community. Those are the 4 keywords and that what we have for the mission of ARCONET. So under ARCONET, we have all those programs that that embrace also the community around me. But as things started to grow and get better, we would attract not only better teachers or collaborators, but students from other regions, students from other countries. Yeah. So it has really grown. And now everything is a little bit more organized in the sense that we have almost a program for just about anybody who needs, and whatever your needs are. If you're in Chile and would like to come and potentially study in the United States, we have a program that helps you with all the resources and the training and the preparation for that. And if you are a senior that wants to apply to Curtis Institute of Music and you want high-level training, and okay, that's fine. We have a program for you. Or you're just a local student who enjoys the orchestra at school and you're 9 years old and you would like to just take private lessons. we have a program for you, and so forth. So that's kind of like how that idea of integrating the arts was born, just to form an organization where we all coexist and we are united through the arts. I don't want to use a music word because I thought it goes beyond. And I didn't want to use the word like music school or something like that, because I felt it was not an entity that was just stationary. I felt it was moving, and it was more like a network. It was more like a place where we all gather and are in movement. So never the word of a school came to my head.
It's been tremendously successful. And I mean, it's been fun watching the explosion of ArcoNet out of just kind of a germ of an idea all these years ago. And now with all these amazing programs going on, congratulations on that, first of all.
Thank you. We try, and we are always, trying to innovate or trying to change, create with the whole Zoom, the whole, so it's we continue to try to improve things. We have a lot to learn and a lot to grow, but I have to say I'm really proud of the community that we have created. We have
great
alumni and current students, the faculty. It's a wonderful environment, and more importantly than whether the student wants to win a competition or get into a conservatory, it's just finding this safe place, for at least for my child, and then all the children that have been sort of affected by it in a positive way, is that you find this place where you can come together and with a sense of a common goal, whether it's playing in the orchestra or being in a camp. They feel like ArcoNet is like their second home. I truly say this with a lot of pride. My students, we feel that way, the faculty, the collaborators, our audience, the community members. And I'm proud because it's out of an accident almost. This whole thing was sort of born, not that I ever planned to be such a devoted teacher, but now
there's a lot to be proud of. It's a great accomplishment. So the next question actually feels almost ridiculous, because you've just been talking about the orchestras you play in and the quartet that's almost a full-time quartet, and the teaching, which is certainly more than a full-time job. Do you have any free time? And what do you like to do with that free time that isn't musical?
Yes. So that's funny, because a lot of people think I would never sleep. I don't have time to do anything else. And that's sort of like in my later years. I look forward to when I see my book and I say, I actually write the word free. And what that means, yes, it means a lot. I love having fun. I love going out. I love seeing my friends. I love talking to people. That was the hardest part about this whole pandemic, especially in the winter. Even though when the summer was happening and the weather was okay, I was doing just fine. But I love cooking. I love other disciplines like nutrition and psychology. I love watching a lot of cooking videos. Now in the pandemic, of course, everything is different, but being out, I realized that just being in Florida this last 2 weeks, it was so necessary. I grew up in a Caribbean country, where the sun is out all the time, the weather is perfect, the beach is there. So outdoors for me, it really, whatever it is, and in my sense, in my case, I mostly just do walks. That's what saved me actually in this whole pandemic. I was able to just go to parks, look at the green, look at the sun, the water, and just enjoy the outdoors. So I love dancing. That's one of the things that I miss the most. I think I told you that before. I was actually a player. I was more of a dancer. And I just love moving. So I love dancing. I love going to my friend's house and doing parties and dancing together. So yeah, I mean, most in the recent times, I've gotten really into the whole food thing. I just love cooking, telling people what to eat or what not to eat. I love doing that. I should stop. One of these days, people are going to get really angry at me because no, this is not healthy for you. I've become a health a health coach in my head. I love nutrition and just eating. I think it's so important because it's people would think that I don't sleep or eat, and those are the things that probably keep me going. Actually, I sleep. The quartet makes so much fun of me every time we're out. It's like I need unless I start counting, my 8 hours. So they make fun of me all the time. I sleep very well, thank God. If not, I try to make myself sleep a lot or enough. And I love to have fun, just
That's great.
to be out. And there's always at my house, there's always, not right now, but it was always a party, a gathering. I'm cooking this, come and try it, or let's go and do something. So my kids know it. Even my kids, I'm like, you're so boring. My son is always practicing, and the other one likes to have fun. But yeah, I like to have fun.
It's great that you have things to keep you sane, because I think that during times like these, it's those things, going for walks, cooking a nice meal, that really it keeps a sense of normalcy to our lives. And so one last thing before we finish, and that's to talk a little bit about the Harrisburg Symphony. You play with a lot of orchestras. You certainly play with a lot of other organizations. If you had to choose something that makes the Harrisburg Symphony unique, what makes it special about playing here? What do you think it is that keeps you coming back?
Well, that is true. Once I got the job, I haven't stopped going. Maybe there was 1 year where I took, no, I don't think so. I think I haven't stopped going. And it's the only orchestra that since I got the job, I've consistently kept coming back. Well, at the beginning, for sure, it was the experience of playing in a big orchestra, because growing up, chamber was always my thing. And then I was in a string quartet. So it was the novelty for me. I looked forward to just the sounds, being there surrounded by all these instruments and playing this repertoire that was sort of a novelty to me, because even though I did it in school, I didn't have huge symphonic experience. So just the music itself was, the repertoire choice, the music that we played, that was for sure one big highlight. As you come to the years and then you start to develop more relationships with the players, with the conductor, I've associated Harrisburg with going to see my friends. And it was the one thing that, oh my goodness, we talk about this all the time. We look forward to going to Harrisburg because we're going to see our friends. We're going to do the restaurant that we love, and we're going to get to play this music that is so much fun. So that's the association in my brain. I love seeing the people. We love the conductor. We're not going to lie. We love you. So, I mean, it keeps, I thought when things started to get a little crazy with so much traveling with the quartet, is it really necessary? And it's not even, it's almost like a therapeutic way for an artist, at least for me, to just be able to put together the things that I love. Like, I'm playing music. We're so lucky to even be doing that. Then it's with good people, with fun people, and it's our little mini getaway. So
it's funny when you were talking about ArcoNet and particularly the camp, I'm thinking, that's kind of like what the Harrisburg Symphony is like. It's exactly. A place where people gather with their friends, make great music in a safe space, in a place of mutual respect.
Exactly. Those are the communities that I like to be a part of. And I believe in that. I just, and either, who knows what it is in life, if you attract what you love. I'm not sure what it is, but I have found that. And there were times where, yes, I was like, should I be making this effort to, I remember I drove from a quartet last year from Virginia. We had a recording with Olga Kern, so we couldn't do that, but I didn't want to say no to Harrisburg. I said, please let me miss the first rehearsal. I'll drive. I drove 6 hours from Virginia. I don't care. And then I get there and Daniel is there. Let's go to Vietnamese. And then we were playing. I forget what we were playing. But so, yeah, I mean, that's what it is to me. The music, the people, and the environment.
Well, we love having you in the orchestra.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful to see you after all this time. And I can't wait for us to be back on stage playing regularly together. But in the meantime, keep up the great work. Send my
Thank
love to
you.
the members of the Dali Quartet.
Absolutely.
And again, I look forward to seeing you in better times. But take care
Thank
of
you.
yourself.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to my sound and accepting me in the orchestra, and for choosing such a great repertoire, and choosing people that also are not just phenomenal players, but before anything, most importantly, great human beings.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to surround ourselves with, because
Amen to that.
that's what it's all about.
Well,
Thank
many
you.
thanks. Thanks for doing this today, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Adriana for sharing her story and her beautiful music. We hope you'll join us for future episodes of Conversations with the Maestro. As always, you can get all information about what the Harrisburg Symphony is up to at our website, www.harrisburgsymphony.org. March marks a very special month for the Harrisburg Symphony. It is in fact the month that 90 years ago we had our very first concert here in Harrisburg. So look out for special activities and special events geared towards that commemoration. For now, I thank you very, very much for joining us, and I will see you next time.